Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, the Disney afternoon cartoon that first aired in 1989, hasn't been relevant in a long time, apart from like a cameo or random merchandise. Don't get me wrong, I like it for what it is. It was a cute little show for kids from a more innocent time, with a lot of Asian stereotypes for some reason. Being honest, I'd still rate shows like Darkwing Duck or Gargoyles over Rescue Rangers, because while Chip and Dale had its charm, and don't get me wrong, I still think it's a very good cartoon, especially for what it was at the time, those two shows in particular felt more refined in a way. But then a few months ago, this movie comes out on Disney+. You might remember it from a few months ago. Now, the original show is no stranger to pop culture references. But instead of being a straight adaptation of the series, this was a quote-unquote self-aware meta-take on the characters, more like Who Framed Roger Rabbit than the thing it was supposed to be based on. Stuffed it to the brim with references to things Disney doesn't own and cameos that really seem to impress people who aren't me. The movie and everything in it had to be vetted by lawyers and the owners of the non-Disney intellectual properties used in the film as to not hurt the IPs or the Disney brand as a whole. They poke fun at these characters featured in the movie in the most milquetoast way imaginable in order to not offend anyone who's not alive at least. The creators of this film had little to no confidence in the source material, which is why they turned it into this movie. The movie really doesn't have anything meaningful or interesting to say about anything. It's just reboots. There sure are a lot of them these days, am I right? There's even a scene where Chip criticizes a bunch of fake reboots and sequels, then sees one that looks like complete junk and watches it anyways. And he likes it, so I guess not all reboots are bad. Which makes the movie self-aware, or that's what the director Akiva Schaffer thinks, and that's about it. Even as a spiritual sequel to Roger Rabbit, it doesn't have nearly the amount of effort put into it. Nobody online's talking about the plot of this movie because the plot doesn't matter, the characters don't matter, not really. It has a story, but it's so generic and the writing has more holes than Swiss cheese. Oh wait, I have to do that again, sorry. It has a story, but it's so generic and the writing has more holes than Swiss cheese. The only thing in the movie that matters is the references. It's for people who might have grown up with the show but don't remember much about it at all, or are maybe more nostalgic for Disney as a whole, but not for Rescue Rangers fans. Overall, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers is incredibly mediocre. It's like it wants to be the 21 Jump Street movie mixed with Roger Rabbit, but it's just not. I realize that this movie is so boring that it wasn't really worth making a full video review out of. As a movie, it's not really that bad, but it's not really that good either. And in some ways, that just might be even worse than being surprisingly good or straight up terrible. Either of which I hoped that it was going to be, because at least a movie like that is interesting to discuss. So yeah, this video was not a review of the movie, but there was one aspect of this film that I haven't heard anyone talk about involving the characters. And no, it's not what you think it is. It's about the character Dale, played in this film by Andy Samberg, and the fact that he's a massively self-obsessed narcissist. The character, not Andy Samberg in real life, as far as I know.
Dale. Chip. Hey!
He's obsessed with clinging to the fame he had 30 years ago. He won't shut up about the show, or himself. He always wants to be the center of attention, and he can't stop making terrible self-centered decisions that blow up in his face. The cop character, who gives a surprisingly bad performance in this movie, tells him just how much of a huge fan of the show she was growing up, and he just falls in love with her, stroking his ego.
I'm Ellie Steckler. I am a huge fan.
Really?
I actually became a detective because as a little girl growing up in Albany, I wanted to help people, just like you guys.
No way! We are so honored. Namaste.
You know that was just a TV show, right? Not real.
Chip, inspiration is inspiration.
He gets CGI surgery that makes him look like an Alvin and the Chipmunks reject.
His body is meant to be looked at, not touched.
The first time Chip thinks Dale is dead, he breaks into tears, and Dale is just relishing in the moment.
Chip, you were crying. You really do love me.
What?
From the opening of the film, which is told from Dale's perspective with narration from him by the way, he's got main character syndrome as soon as he comes on screen. We're shown how he met Chip in elementary school, they become best friends, grow up together, and eventually move to Hollywood and get the show. It's 1990 and they just wrapped the third season of Rescue Rangers. After shooting the last episode, Chip makes some speech or something with the comment about how lonely and pathetic Dale was before Chip found him. They just laugh at Dale at the rap party, which makes him the big sad, I guess. Then this scene happens, which I find very interesting. In his trailer, Dale straight up tells Chip he's quitting the show so he can be the star of some dumb spin-off that's a reference to the cartoon, then uses Chip's own words against him. And Chip is shocked.
The biggest risk is not taking any risk at all.
And just like you always say, the biggest risk is not picking any risk at all.
Because he intentionally hid this information from him. We're never actually shown Chip being overly controlling of Dale up until this point, unless you count the show, which isn't real.
When we were kids, we were in it together.
What are you talking about? We're still in it together.
What is he talking about? I don't know. The montage at the beginning was meant to show how genuine the friendship they had was, and it all seemed pretty mutual. Dale came up with the jokes, and Chip helped refine them and make them funny. Dale's talking about all these things that we aren't shown and come out of nowhere apart from the one comment during the speech.
If you do this, they might cancel the show.
No, they won't do that. I mean, everyone knows you're the favorite.
He is?
Okay, so you're gonna risk all of Rescue Rangers because I'm a little more popular than you.
Which they can't actually prove that. And Dale thinks that he's less important than Chip, even though Rescue Rangers doesn't work without both of them in it. He doesn't bring up how getting the show canceled would put a good amount of the cast and crew out of a job, which is a way bigger deal. But does Dale care? Not really. Even if Chip was lying and only used the show as his meal ticket, he'd still have a point. The movie doesn't show or tell us what Gadget, Monterey Jack, or Zipper think about his decision to leave the show, or even what they think about him as a person. Person? Chipmunk? In general. I can imagine that they were upset when Dale just went behind their backs and bailed on them, but the movie only cares about the duo instead of the entire team, so it doesn't really matter. Chip takes way too much ownership over Dale in this one particular scene only, while at the same time is never too controlling over him for the rest of the movie.
After everything I've done for you, do not pick up that phone.
I'm sorry.
Dale's agent calls about the pilot, Dale chooses to leave the show, and that's that. Dale's pilot flops and Rescue Rangers is cancelled, and it only cost him his childhood friendship. I guess that's show business. This is like watching a stereotypical music biopic where the band breaks up.
All right, if that's the way you feel about me, I quit.
If we're being honest, by the third season the show would have gotten cancelled anyways, because by that point it had ran its course and hit the 65 episode requirement for syndication. Fade into present day where Dale is washed up, having to do con appearances and stripping, you heard me, possibly to pay out the massive amounts of debt he got into by getting his CGI surgery. But mostly it's a way to feed his ego because he really doesn't seem to care about interacting with fans. He just wants to be famous again, while Chip has moved on to selling insurance and living with his CGI dog. Suddenly, for plot reasons involving a character the audience is supposed to care about because they grew up with the show or something, brings Chip and Dale back together again. After all these years. Then, during the second act of Midpoint, this scene happens, where... well, let me just tell you, because it's the part of the movie that inspired me to make this video in the first place. Chip and Dale get into an argument at a police station after they discover Monty's been bootlegged and that they let the bad guy, Sweet Pete, who is a terrible villain by the way, escape. Chip sees Dale streaming on his phone and he gets completely fed up. He just vents about how the show ending basically ruined his life and made him more alone and miserable. He lost the other three characters I assume were his friends, his gig in the entertainment industry, the one thing he pursued his entire life, and being around Dale again just makes him feel worse. Everything Chip is saying makes complete sense, and I'm thinking, wow, the movie's being self-aware for once. And then Dale says this.
You know, the crazy thing is, way back then, I didn't even want to do Double O Dale.
What?
That's gonna sound stupid, but I think I just wanted you to tell me you needed me. That I wasn't just some pathetic chipmunk you found eating alone at school.
What? This is completely ridiculous. Chip's face just says it all. It's like he didn't believe that their friendship was real. What they went through to break into the industry and get the show. Dale emotionally manipulates Chip into telling him exactly what he wants to hear multiple times, yet he's still not satisfied.
Do you know how dumb that is?
Well, I am the dumb one.
It's not as if Chip ever bunks him on the head, or verbally abuses him, or any of those other things outside of the show. Chip was such an a-hole sometimes.
You really goofed up this time, Dale. Sometimes I think the Rescue Rangers would be better off without you. So why don't you do something you can't mess up, like sightseeing?
Oh my god.
Maybe he'll learn his lesson if we solve this one case without him.
It's only like that on the show, but the thing is, there's a good amount of episodes focusing on Dale as the main character, where they reinforce how he's a valuable member of the team, and he even saves the day.
You and I are a team. Really? Absolutely. And if we're going to stop that cat, we need your help. Right, Rangers?
We aren't the Rescue Rangers without you.
Thanks, guys. I never knew feeling bad could feel so good.
But that wasn't real. This movie is real. Chip was genuinely hurt by what Dale did and said to him at the beginning of the movie. He told him how much he and everyone else working on the show needed him. Well, maybe not that last part exactly, but Dale turned his back on everyone. He makes the impulsive choice to just completely abandon his best friend for his own gain, whichever way you look at it, wanting to do the show or not. Chip could have handled it better, sure, but still. For the briefest of moments, he thought about what he'd just done. Then he goes back to the phone call with his agent, until the climax of the movie, where Dale and Chip learn the power of friendship or whatever. He says screw the reboot and his agent and throws the phone away, and together they beat the Bobby Driscoll parody bad guy. After admittedly taking a bullet for Chip, Chip thinks Dale is dead. Again, Chip reveals how alone he felt as a kid until he made friends with Dale, and that brings Dale back to life, because everything Chip said earlier just wasn't good enough for him. Chip in the movie is really bitter and jaded, but he's not enough of a jerk for this to really work the way I think they wanted it to. I mean, Monterey says he's in trouble and he immediately runs over to help him out, even though they haven't seen each other in years. Dale shows up afterwards, and after some character from an old Avengers cartoon I don't care about tells him more fans would show up at the convention if they were both there, he arrives to Monty's place after he begs them both for help, just so he can convince Chip to do a crappy reboot, basically ignoring Monty. It's as if Dale is kind of in the wrong, but Chip is more in the wrong and he must suffer for it. Chip is kind of like how he was in the show, except without the determined to a fault, adventurous, and serious personality, you know, like Indiana Jones? Because that was all fake, so he's really just restrained and deadpan and boring. You may be saying, Zero Night, you moron. They did this on purpose. This movie's self-aware. It's called a character arc. Stop thinking about it so hard. They undercut almost every emotional moment with a joke because it's supposed to be funny, except when it's not. It's self-aware. Is it though? Not particularly. The film pretends to be self-aware, but really isn't.
Do you have any original ideas, or are you just constantly recycling old scripts?
In a lot of ways, many of which I'll just throw up on the screen maybe right now because I don't feel like explaining them in depth. I'm self-aware enough to know that it's not worth the effort. It's almost as if they had an idea for this character, but his actions contradict what he says he really wants. Dale's problem wasn't that Chip didn't need him, they clearly needed him for the Rescue Rangers show to work. It was that nobody took him seriously. He wanted to be taken seriously as an actor. He wanted more attention and fame, so he did something reckless to get it. He tried and failed to bait his friends to getting him what he wanted, something he does throughout the entire movie. And all he had to do was get the show canceled and become a struggling actor for the past 30 years. I have no problem with characters having negative traits like being dumb or egotistical if they're written well. I don't know, I just thought Dale being a massively conceited former celebrity like this was kind of funny unintentionally due to the bad writing. And this movie is supposed to be an ironic meta thing, except when it's sappy and cliche unironically. And the characters end up being kinda or just forgettable. Other than, well, J.K. Simmons.
I'm sorry. I couldn't do it any longer.
Chip is a less depressed Edward Norton from Fight Club. Dale's an idiotic egomaniac. Monty's a drug addict. Zipper sounds like he wants to sell me Allstate. And Gadget is the same because they were too lazy to give her a different character.
I'm amazed this thing actually flies! And you know how to fly it!
Yeah, I guess my character from the old show and my character in real life are basically exactly the same.
It's funny because it's self-aware. They acknowledged it in the movie, that means it's okay. But it wasn't particularly surprising when I discovered that the creators of the film couldn't figure out what to do with 3/5 of the cast of the cartoon, so decided to barely put them in the movie.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm not surprised, like obviously it's Chip and Dale, but we have other members of the Rescue Rangers who did not get to shine as much, but they did get some due.
If there was a way to have got them more into this movie, we tried it. We did so many different rewrites of jamming them, and they always felt shoehorned into this specific story. And that happens with a lot of movies not based on IP, where you have like 5 characters, and as you refine the story, you're like, you know what, these 2 characters should be 1 character, and this character does not need to be in here, let's get rid of it. And I feel like it's a very normal part of a script that the amount of characters you start with get whittled down, because you just are telling a succinct story for 90 minutes. And so whenever we tried to make them a bigger part, you felt the story grinding to a halt, because it just wasn't their story. It was a Chip and Dale friendship story.
Absolutely incredible. Chip and Dale's entire relationship arc is so predictable, and the movie is so detached and ironic that it doesn't work and it never feels sincere. Like they're gonna start laughing and making fun of how stupid and cliche they're being, but it doesn't happen. Moments taken seriously by the film such as these are done so without putting in the effort to make them work emotionally. Where's the self-awareness? The main premise is so bizarre that it's actually a kind of interesting idea for the movie, but again, they don't do anything with it. The decisions the characters make almost feel in character. It's almost faithful to the show, yet it doesn't come together the way it should. This entire flashback feels like it's written for the beginning, but really would have made more sense later in the movie. But unfortunately, the movie wasn't edited by David Lynch like the original show. And that's about it. This video was not an excuse for me to put out something while I work on bigger projects at a glacial pace, and it is not because I got distracted from watching the show for the first time because I never grew up with it, and I thought it was fun to watch. I did it to prove a point, and that's that everyone was going to forget about it a week after it dropped on Disney+, and it's not that good. I was mostly right. It was more like a week and a half. Somehow it's already dated. Remember Ugly Sonic? I remember Ugly Sonic.
It's been a year, Daddy. I really, really miss you.
He's ugly in Sonic. Remember 2019? The trailer with Ugly Sonic was 3 years ago. Ugly Sonic, he even shows up at the end. Ugly movie trailer Sonic. And that, viewers, is how you run a joke into the ground. So how will the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers movie be remembered in the coming years, especially when compared to other live action animation hybrid films put out by Disney? It won't be. I know I started this video off by saying the plot and characters didn't matter, then spend this amount of minutes talking about the plot and the characters. Remember, it's okay because I'm being self-aware. What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with what I have to say? Let me know. I just made a Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers video about the movie that I won't remember in a few months. Not really, but kind of sort of based on the Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers TV show, as an excuse to talk about the movie and the TV show. I don't even know if that makes any sense. I'm Zero Night. Thanks for watching. That was funny once 15 years ago.